So the season of creation, the word ecology, and all of these are going to be themed ecologically, is sort of describing the connections between things. And it seems to me that one of the biggest challenges facing us, I mean, we're all, I'm sure, more than aware of the climate crisis, present to us, but one of the challenges in that seems to me to be a sort of disconnection from the natural world, a disconnection from ourselves, a disconnection from the sacred, the mystery at the heart of things. And so this evening, I'm hoping that we'll be sort of using our imaginations to tune back into a connection, and also hoping to offer something which you can then go and use, not in your imagination, but out in the real world as well. There's a great phrase, I can't remember who said it, but it says, "We won't save what we don't love. We won't save what we don't love." And it seems to me that we don't love in the generic or in the abstract. Much as I might love to say truthfully that I love humanity, I probably don't. There are certain members of humanity I find deeply irritating, for example. But I do love, my family and my friends, and the reason I love them is because of the particular persons that they are. Or I love particular trees in my garden, or particular, like a wren that comes and lives in our woodpile and had babies this year in the top of our carport thing. So we love the particular. And there's an author called Robert McFarlane, who I imagine those of you who are British will have come across. There's some nods at least. And he is a lover of language and a lover of landscape. And he was doing some research, and he discovered that quite a lot of words in junior dictionaries, so dictionaries for children, were being taken out. Natural words like acorn, adder, ash, beech, bluebell, buttercup, catkin, conker, cowslip, cygnet, dandelion, the list goes on. And these had been replaced with things felt to be more useful and important. Things like attachment, block graph, blog, broadband, bullet point, celebrity, chat room, committee, cut and paste, MP3 player, ... the list goes on. And he was saying, actually, there's something more than these words being lost here. Our capacity to be in relationship with the things which we call those words is also being endangered. That this sort of shift towards a kind of generic language where it's just mountains or hills or fields, versus very particular words for very particular things. So I have actually two of his photographs that I would like to show you to demonstrate two of these words. I'm just going to share the screen for a sec. So this is Amil, A-M-M-I-L. It's a Devon term for the thin film of ice that lacquers all leaves, twigs and grass blades when a freeze follows a partial thaw. There's a word for that very specific thing, when a thin film of ice that lacquers all leaves, twigs and grass blades when a freeze follows a partial thaw. I just love how particular that is. And another one. This is a shreep, again, some kind of English dialectal term. And a shreep, S-H-R-E-E-P, is a mist that is slowly clearing. So it's not just the mist, but it's the fact that this mist is beginning to kind of dissipate. It's called a shreep. He came across a whole array of terms like these, very, very specifically about very, very particular experiences in the natural world. And he pointed out that as soon as he was aware of these terms, he started to notice the things that the terms referred to, where he hadn't been noticing them in the same way before. They almost hadn't registered because he wasn't aware that they were a nameable thing. And he also talks about a poet who's a Jesuit poet, in fact, Gerard Manley Hopkins, again, a great lover of nature. And his poetry is riddled with beautiful descriptive language. And Gerard Manley Hopkins, when he didn't have a specific term that captured something that he was interested in capturing, he would just make one up. So for example, shive light, he described as the lances of sunshine that pierce the canopy of a wood, or gold foil, a sky lit by lightning in zigzag dints and creasings. I don't know about you, but even in saying these and like getting my mouth around these words, I kind of, they animate my imagination. They kind of, conjure things up for me, images and textures and experiences. And these somehow forge connections or forge threads between ourselves and the rest of the natural world. And we are just as much a part of this natural world as anything else. I think we like to think that we're somehow, some alien species that came down, humanity, and nature is our backdrop. But we are intimately related to these kin, non-human animals and plants that surround us and sustain us. In fact, there's another author who talks about our bodies are wild, and he says, the involuntary quick turn of the head a shout, the vertigo at looking off a precipice, the heart in the throat in a moment of danger, the catch of breath, the quiet moments, relaxing, staring, reflecting, are all universal responses of this mammal body. They're things we can tune into. Which is what we're going to do this evening. We're going to spend a little bit of time using our imaginations to tune in quite specifically to something particular in our experience. So I'll guide you through this, but for the time being, maybe again, settling back, closing your eyes if that's helpful. The image will remain on the screen if that's more useful for you. And tuning back into that breath that you noticed a little bit earlier. This breath that is just breathing without you willing it or choosing it necessarily. Just part of your natural self. Maybe again, just briefly checking in with how you are. You tuned into that a little bit earlier. And just being welcoming of however that is. Might be deeply relaxed and peaceful, or actually you might find yourself agitated or bored or restless. And just notice. Try not to judge. And so we've paid attention to ourselves a little bit, how we are. Now just spend a moment noticing, how is God present to you? Whoever God or whatever God is for you. How is that mystery at the heart of the universe present to you just now? And maybe in your own words, ask for the gift of connection, noticing these threads that link you in with the rest of the natural world of which you're a part. So now beginning to tune in, if we haven't already started that with our imaginations, I'd like you to bring to mind a part of the natural world that you encounter regularly, and try and be as specific as you can. It might be a particular knot on the bark of a tree in your garden or on your street, or even a weed that you've spotted growing in your pavement. Maybe a houseplant you've got inside, maybe a beach you attend regularly. But somewhere you're really familiar with, that you encounter regularly, maybe that you know you'll see in the month of September. Just allow that to come to mind, maybe even show itself to you. Just be kind of receptive and curious as to what comes to your memory or your imagination. And it might be that there are lots of possibilities coming to mind, but just settle on one. Just give that one part of the natural world the gift of your attention for the next little while. And once you've settled on it, really allow the details to come into view for you, using all of your senses. What can you see? Be colors or textures, light or dark. Are there sounds that are associated or around? What can you feel if you reach out and touch? Maybe there are even things you can taste, like the salty sea air if you're by the ocean. Just allow all of the details to come into focus, and trust that whichever ones are more in focus for you, then that's okay. And what's your relationship to this piece of creation? When and where do you encounter it? Does it play a sort of particular role in your life? Does it stir up certain things in you, certain emotional responses or desires? And just really get into the detail. Maybe there's a time of day when you particularly notice it, or a certain light effect that you enjoy, or maybe certain creatures are present sometimes. Maybe it's something you are kind of battling with. Maybe you don't love it, you'd like to get rid of it. Whatever it is, just tune in. Now, it may be that you are already very familiar with the name of this part of the natural world, whether it's a generic name or a very specific name. And it doesn't matter if you are or you're not, but we're going to play a little bit with naming. A naming which isn't sort of tying down and limiting, but a naming which is kind of open and curious and wondering and imaginative. So using your imagination still and tuned in to this specific part of the natural world, I'd like you to allow it to name itself to you. Now, this might be a real term. It might be gobbledygook. It might be something totally unexpected and surprising. So just be sort of curious and notice Notice what comes into your imagination, and you might even want to sort of sound out some words. You're on mute, so we shouldn't be able to hear you. Yeah. How is this part naming itself to you? And naming itself in its very specificity. And just notice also what the process of naming is like. Does it shift your relationship? You also may not find something that fits or resonates for now, and that's also okay. Maybe for a moment, changing things around a bit and asking what would this part of the natural world notice about you or call you? You as you are here and now in your concreteness and your specificity. And you might find yourself sort of striving after finding a name or finding an answer, and maybe just relax a little bit, just be open, have a disposition of openness and receptivity, and if something wants to come along, it'll come along, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't, and that's how it is, and that's okay. And there's a sense in the Ignatian tradition of a God, whatever it is we mean by God, who is dwelling intimately at the heart of everything that exists, including you and including this part of the natural world and including that space or connection between you. So what's God experiencing or noticing in this time about you, about that part? I'm going to leave a little bit of time just to maybe have a conversation. You might just end up being whatever feels inviting and helpful. And maybe also tuning in, given the reality that we exist in, a world in ecological crisis. Is there something that this part of the natural world is desiring of you, communicating particularly to you? And then knowing that any glimmers or beginnings of something that have emerged, you can go back to at any time. But for now, maybe drawing this time to a close in whatever way is helpful for you. And giving thanks and bringing yourself back into this room with this group of people gathered together.